Hey everybody, welcome to another Bancroft Brothers animation podcast. Tony, this is episode 270. We never talk about the numbers.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, because our numbers got off a long time ago, and somehow, I don't know how we've gotten them back on track, but there's some science there. It should be really just math that we can figure out how many episodes.
I think we just kind of, not started over, but reinvented what number we were on. And it is fairly accurate, give or take probably 2 episodes. But yeah, 270 is the number we're living with.
And we're a little off on this one. It was supposed to come out last week on Friday, so sometimes that happens. We were away on a trip. We went to the Sharjah Animation Conference. Yes, Sharjah is outside of Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. And it's amazing. UAE. Yes. And that is where there is oil and money and a love of animation, apparently. So we were asked to go speak there. Had a great time. Met so many big fans of animation.
You and I both did 2 different workshops separately.
Yeah.
And I did a character design one, and then, now I can't even remember the second one. It was sort of a continuation, which is, now that you have your own character, how do you bring it to life with expressions and posing? And so it was a little bit more about acting and performance on the second one.
I did one on directing for animation, and then now I'm forgetting what the second one was too. No, it was comedy, creating comedy characters. I really enjoyed doing that one, and I think there was a lot of new material for folks that they'd never heard before.
And that one sold out. Did both of them sell out for you?
Yeah, that's what I was told. I don't know.
Yeah, that's good. So we did that. We also did a panel on the last day, on that Sunday, which was moderated by this great lady that we met, Valentina, who's from California, but is very Italian and very nice. And she was very well prepared and kind of asked us questions about our Disney career. And that was just more like a fan kind of a
it was kind of reminiscent of was Disney animation like in the 90s. So we talked a lot about it. And I put together a slideshow for that played behind us. And I think that was more enjoyable than what we were talking about. Because there was, I always put that one picture of you, Tom, just to embarrass you. And I always put a picture of Aaron Blaise in there too with long hair, because people know what he looks like now. And he used to be like this skinny surfer dude looking guy with long hair, and
he looked like Axl Rose back in the day.
Yeah, he looked like 90s. He was into heavy metal and stuff.
Yeah,
that's Aaron.
Yeah, and then I'm wearing a hula skirt and a coconut bikini because it's a Lilo and Stitch party. Which is ironic because I didn't end up working on Lilo and Stitch. I was there at the very beginning of it. I was going to lead a character.
It was a kickoff party, right? And Chris Sanders was there.
It's me, Chris Sanders, and Rob Corley on a stage, and we're both wearing these hula skirts. I think we did a dance off. I can't remember how that all happened, but it's thankfully a blur. But others, I'm sure, remember it.
I always laugh at that picture whenever I show it publicly, and I try to show it publicly a lot. And I'm very embarrassed for you too, and for your kids. Yeah,
for my kids,
generations.
I feel like but you've kept it fairly quiet. I think because I don't know if that picture's online. I don't know if it's searchable. I'm hoping it's not.
I bet it is somewhere, but I can make that happen.
Yeah, I'd rather you didn't. I'm trying to keep it off the bigger internet out there. So. Well, that was fun, and fortunately, or unfortunately for me, they played that looped as we were talking probably 3 or 4 times, and so that one kept coming up, and there would always be a reaction every time it came up. It seems like, but anyway, it was a fun trip. Claire Keane was there. We got to kind of see her again.
Yeah, that was nice.
Sandro Cluzo was there. It was
Sandro,
great to see him. So some older friends, but lots of newer friends. Like, it was a very international event. Like, there were groups from Africa, there were groups from Italy, groups from France.
It was a big anime. There's a lot of Japanese animators there, and
from Japan too. Yep.
So a lot of anime contingency there. That was kind of the
Tony,
theme.
I got to share this online, but I met one of the designers of Sailor Moon.
What?
And I can't remember her name, but she's an older lady. maybe even older than us. I can't.
Yeah, I
it's
think
hard to
she
say.
adapted the design from the manga.
Right. Yeah, there's the one lady
manga.
that's really known for designing and creating the Sailor Moon, and that's out there. I just don't know her name, but she did the manga. I think this was the lady that then adapted it for the animated series.
Yeah.
And then did the model sheets and stuff like that. And so anyway, she did me a drawing. We traded drawings. I did her a Lion King production drawing.
Oh, you got the better bet.
I did. But
Yeah.
very light touch, though. I'm like, she handed it to me, and I was like, I can't really see it on the paper. And I'm like,
Can you go over it again, please?
yeah, can we just
bolden that?
Here's an ink pen. Can you just ink this too? No, I didn't do that. But yeah, it's still going to hang prominently in my house. So.
Oh, I bet it will.
It's very cool, but I'll scan it and darken it up.
Anyway,
yeah, nice.
Tom, speaking of expos, tonight we got a good one. We're going to reach back into the archives of the Disney Animation Y'all.
But wait, Tony, before we announce this and say who you're going to listen to, we have an announcement which is about Animation Y'all next year, 2026. We have dates. We have announced this online, but not on our podcast. April 10th to the 12th. Is when you're going to want to kind of clear off your calendar.
That's going to be a great weekend, too. The weather's going to be so nice here in Tennessee. Come out to Tennessee. It was cold last year, I got to admit. So we moved it down a little bit. Still going to be at Lipscomb University. We have a beautiful campus there. You're going to want to come to Animation Y'all April 10th through the 12th. We're going to have more guests, Tom, more panels, more exhibitors. More of the animation fun that you know and love, and more. That means more connections for you guys that are trying to get into the animation industry. So
I think it'll easily still be a little bit boutique-y in a good way. So not quite the Lightbox Expo size and everything like that, because we just don't have that much room, honestly. We're not at a convention center, which is good for you guys, I think. Everybody's going to enjoy being able to talk to people. And so, but we are going to let more people in. So there definitely will be more people there. And so that's April 10th to the 12th. We'll have more information soon on the website, animationyallexpo.com. And hopefully exhibitors will be able to start sort of reserving their spots. And those will go very quickly. I think that was the first thing to sell out was exhibitor space last year.
Yeah. And so a lot of the same people that you know and love from the first one, but it's going to be even bigger with even more people. So you're going to want to come, Animation Y'all Expo. And so from last year, the very first one, well, it was really this year, just several months ago, from Animation Y'all Expo number 1, we have this podcast coming to you. It was a panel on Sunday. We had 2 days of panels. And this was one that was called Making It in Animation. And it had such superstar polar, wonderful professionals on it as Lara Carson. Where is my email? There it is. Lara Carson.
I can say it. Yeah.
We had Aaron Blaise. Oh my gosh. Matt O'Callahan, who's a great Disney animator. He was my mentor. And the lovely and wonderful, talented Chelsea Trousdale. Chelsea also was the moderator of the panel. She was super nervous. She told me she had never done that before. What I liked about it, Tom, is
that's a big ask. You didn't ask Aaron, who does that stuff all the time. That's pretty crazy.
Well, I knew that Aaron was going to be busy because he also premiered Snow Bear that weekend. And so he had a lot going on, and I didn't want him to have to do some homework. And Chelsea put her all into it. She really did. She put some great time into thinking about interesting questions and even what her answers would be, because she was right off the cuff with those. Now, I will say, Tom, having listened to the audio, I wish it was a little stronger, something we're going to fix for next year. But you can hear the presenters really well. All the panelists have good, clear vocals, but the audience, there's a Q&A session at the end, and you cannot hear the questions. So but it's worth, we kept it on because it's worth having.
You can figure out the questions
answers,
probably based on the answers.
And the answers are really strong, so you're going to want those. Making it an animation. The mysteries
what I love is that you have two, younger people, the Lara and Chelsea, and then a little bit older generation, Matt and Aaron, more our generation. And so you're going to hear about longevity too, I'm sure, right? About not just how do I get in a job, how do I kind of stay in that job for decades.
Yeah, that was what I wanted to get out of it, hopefully, with that idea. And and I liked the balance there. And it's funny because, Chelsea and Lara talk about how they, kind of feel unworthy to be on the panel with those guys. But I mean, that's what I love about it, though, is that it's that combo, just like you said. So without further ado, Tom, here's Making It Animation from Animation Y'all Expo. Enjoy.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, baby Grace.
Should I say howdy, y'all? Because this is Animation Y'all, right? So fun. All right, we're gonna kick this off. We're gonna each introduce ourselves really quickly so you know who we all are. I mean, you might already know who some of us are if you've been to some of our booths or seen us on other panels. But we'll start with Matt over here and kind of run down the line.
Say who I am.
Yeah, so you say who you are and some notable projects that you've been working on.
I'm Matt O'Callahan. Notable projects. As an animator, Little Mermaid. As a director, Curious George movie. Television creator, Life with Louie. And that's it. Okay.
Awesome. Well, I'm Chelsea Trousdale. I am a character designer. I have worked in mobile games and in animation as well. So I'm currently freelancing with DreamWorks. And I also worked for a mobile game studio called Moon Active, and I've also done some work for Atomic Cartoons. And then I'll pass things off to Lara here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lara. I am a freelance illustrator. And I freelance for Disney, a lot of places that I'm not allowed to talk about, book stuff. I also am a background designer and colorist and viz dev artist for animation studios in Canada, but I've worked for Titmouse, Atomic, Wild Brain, and mostly a lot of Charlie Brown and Snoopy shows. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Aaron Blaise, and I was with Disney for 21 years, and I worked on Lion King and Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin, and I directed Brother Bear, and I've since left, and I have an online art education business called Creature Art Teacher with my business partner Nick Birch in the back, who's filming us all right now. Say hi to Nick.
All right. Let's get started with the meat and potatoes of this presentation, what you all want to know. So we're each going to kind of talk about our experience about breaking into the industry and our stories a little bit, so you can kind of get an idea of what we did, and then we'll kind of get into some tips and tricks for you guys with the industry and how it is now. So we'll just kind of go through the line again, or we can, if anybody has any thoughts, just kind of keep it cash. For me, it was not that long ago that I was one of you guys sitting in a chair right there in a panel just like this, where I was wondering, how the heck am I going to get into the animation industry? It's so competitive. And for me, I felt like it was kind of a long journey, but no time was wasted in that journey. I applied to a lot of jobs in the animation. Never heard back from any of them. It's pretty common. But I felt like in that time, my name was getting saved for future projects. Because for me, what finally got me into the industry was the right project at the right time. And that's how I kind of made it in. I was reached out to by DreamWorks last year for a project that was just the right fit for me as a character designer. And it's been super fun working with them. But what got them to really notice me was something that I really didn't expect. A few years ago, I started needle felt sculpting. And if you guys have been by my booth, you might have seen a few of my little needle felted characters. And it was actually one of my needle felted characters that was on one of their mood boards for one of the shows that they were developing. And that's kind of what got them to reach out to me. So that's kind of my fun little story of kind of how I got into the industry. I'll pass it off to Matt.
How I got into the industry. Well, this is going back several years when I know in talking to a lot of you, I'm learning about all these new animation schools that are popping up all over the place. But back in the late 70s, there weren't any except for one, which was CalArts. So I kind of
here I'm just in high school, and I get an interest, and I sent in, and they send me a little flyer that says all the things I have to learn to get into the program, and one of them was life drawing. I go, life drawing? Where was a 17-year-old going to find like naked people to draw? So had to use my imagination and see who had Playboy books and stuff like that to try and kind of draw out of. But out of that, and then learning how to do drawing of animals and stuff, and I submitted it, and I got accepted into Cal Arts, and then I worked there 2 years, and got brought into the studio. And at the time, they just had a training department, and then you had to kind of get through the training department to stay on to get hired. And then briefly, it just came up the other day. They were working on Mickey's Christmas Carol way back when. They passed out model sheets, and I just picked up, this giant looks kind of fun to draw, and I started doing a little test scene of the giant, and then fortunately, Glenn Keane was going to animate the giant, and then he sort of pulled me in, and I became sort of his assistant. And then that's how I started my career, working under him for several years until I was able to sort of branch off and kind of float alone. But and then from there, it's just been ping-ponging around different studios and doing different kinds of work. But that's enough for me.
My story was, it's not, I don't really like telling people because it's not very helpful. But basically I was in university, and I had like a cohort class that had like our whole illustration, I majored in illustration. It was our whole department. We had all of the teachers in one class. And our teachers brought in some of their like buddies to kind of be like, this is my job, like what you can do with an illustration degree, because it wasn't necessarily animation, like it wasn't a clear path to animation. And so they brought in like book illustrators and like a lot of like other types of art jobs. But there was one person that I talked to, and she worked in animation, and I had a character design portfolio at the time. And I showed her my stuff, and like they made us do like business cards, and it was like the most shit business card you've ever seen, but it was fine. And I gave it to her, and then like a week later, an art director followed me on Instagram, which then she commented on something, and then I got an email like 2 days later being like, hey, you want a job? And I was like yes, yes I do. But I started as a character designer, and then they had me doing like foot charts and hand charts, and I was like, don't know about this. And also the show that I was on was really chaotic at the time, and the art director was like, hey, can you help out with backgrounds for a minute? And just do like this one. And then it's been like 6 years and I'm still doing backgrounds. So yeah, that's kind of how it started. And then like the freelance stuff sort of just comes. But that's also like putting yourself, like I put myself out there, and I go to like a lot of expos and cons and like talk to people a lot. And that's where most of that comes from. So that's great.
My whole career has just been defined by jumping at opportunity and doors closing and opening and that sort of thing. And so, I never intended to be an animator. I wanted to be a painter. I wanted to be an illustrator. I went to the Great College of Art and Design and majored in illustration with the intent of working for National Geographic. And, but I didn't want to freelance, and I found out that National Geographic only freelanced. This was back in the 80s. And so I started looking for other opportunities. Just looking for. I just love to draw. I love to paint. I grew up drawing animals and everything else. And so I had two companies that were coming to our school. Had two people that were coming to our school to interview. One was Hallmark Cards, and the other one was Disney. It was the first time Disney had ever gone outside of an animation school. They wanted to see if they could take people that could draw and teach them how to animate. And lucky for me, Disney was first. I put together a portfolio, and otherwise I could be in Kansas City right now making greeting cards. But Disney was first. I put together a portfolio of animal drawings and figure drawings, and I got into this internship. And like Matt, during my internship, I was lucky enough to be paired up with Glenn Keane, and I fell in love with animation. Glenn was such a passionate animator, and he just exudes passion, and you can't help but kind of soak that in. And so it bled into my heart and my soul. And so, I mean, I remember sitting with Glenn for about 10 minutes in his office and realizing that this is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And that was 38 years ago. So here we are. Yeah.
Amazing. Something I wanted to touch on a little bit about is what advice should we give all of these people here for someone applying to their first job or any job in the animation industry? Who wants to go first? Anybody have any tips they want to share?
Well, it's the obvious thing is putting your best foot forward visually, right? We're in a visual medium. So, you know, our language, everything that we do, you know, it doesn't matter what degree you have or anything like that. They want to see if you can draw, if you can paint, if you can animate, whatever it is. And so it's really, you're being defined by your portfolio. So you want that first, those first few pages to be as strong as they can. You don't want to overload it. There's, it's all the things that you hear about as far as what makes a strong portfolio. That's the first and foremost. And then, you've got to be prepared to be able to work with people. That's, one of the biggest ones. And the people that can't work with others, the ones that can't take criticism, the ones that, have a hard time collaborating, those are the ones that kind of get weeded out quickly. So when you can collaborate and you can draw and you can paint, then you got a future.
Yeah, for sure.
I would just like going off of that. I really feel like every job that I've gotten like after the first one, because I feel like the first one is kind of the hardest. It's like the hardest one to get because you got to kind of get in there, and there's like that's where the most of the competition is. But then once you're in, and once you're like, they know that you're good to work with, and they know your name, and they know that you're like almost like teachable in a way. Like you don't have to be the best immediately. But if you're like likable enough and teachable enough, then that like goes a long way. Because every job that I've gotten in animation has been because somebody has like recommended me, or somebody has brought me on, or somebody has pulled me in. So I haven't like after the first one, I've never really had to like apply to anything because as long as if you're nice and teachable and you take feedback
I think dependability comes out of that.
Oh yeah, for sure.
They don't recommend you for.
Nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's that dependability.
Yeah.
It's the niceties that go with it. You know. So yeah. Matt, I feel like we're stealing from you here.
No, that's fine. I think because a lot of you guys are new and trying to get into the industry, and the first thing is going to be a portfolio, whether it's online or a hard copy. I would just try to think of simplicity and kind of know what you're going for, because what we have a tendency to do is like throw in everything we've ever done, or here's a background painting I did, and here's a life drawing, and here's this and that. And sometimes when you get portfolios, people are going, well, this is great work. I don't know what this person wants to do.
Right.
And so it's always good to pay attention to what jobs that they're looking for, whether it's assistants or animation, or a lot of guys, a lot of people want to go into production first. That has nothing to do with portfolio, but anyway, if you're going for an artist job, kind of have an idea of what you want to do. I want to be a storyboard artist. Then you should have storyboard samples. You could have a little bit of life drawing or whatever, but the balance should be what you're focusing on. And as an animator, then you'd want to do animation tests, but really kind of like help them understand. It's almost like you're kind of pointing them to where you want to go. And that would be my suggestion. Simplify your work and really highlight what you truly want to do. You could always adjust later, to different jobs, but follow your heart and where you want to go, and then put that best foot forward.
Yeah, that's great advice. And to kind of bounce a little bit off of that, to add a little bit more inspiration of like how to like kind of curate your portfolio. Look at artists that you respect, that you really love their work, and they're in the industry. If you know an artist that's in the industry, look at their portfolio, kind of like see kind of what they do, how they curate it, how much stuff they have on there, and take a look at your portfolio and see where you can tweak things and improve things to feel like it stacks up against that portfolio. somebody who's already in the industry. That's something that really helped me. I've had lots of friends get into the industry before I did. And so I was always watching their portfolio saying like, okay, what are they doing that is like, what do they have in their portfolio that I don't have? Oh, character turns, let's get some character turns in there. Or, oh, they're really good at storytelling. I need to have more storytelling about my characters kind of in my portfolio, because recruiters actually really love that. They like to see storytelling. They like, if you're a character designer, they love to see that there's a story with that character. They feel like they know who that character is. And keeping your portfolio really organized and easy to navigate is huge. And making sure that your images load and don't like take forever to load, and it's not hard to find things. Like, you kind of have to play a little bit the web designer, the graphic designer. Not to say you have to be a web designer. I'm not a web designer. I use Squarespace. They do most of the work. I just, put things in places. But make sure that your website feels professional and is easy to navigate, because that goes a long way. Can really sell you as a professional. So that's my 2 cents.
And just like also to add kind of in the organizational thing, if you have 2 things that you're like, for me, I have like a freelance thing, which is like totally different than my animation industry portfolio. And like I keep them very separate. And if I'm applying for something freelance, like I'm not showing them anything that I do really for animation, because it has nothing to do with anything. Mm-hmm. And like vice versa. So it's like okay to give people like exactly what they need, even if you are interested in 2 things, because otherwise
specific links. If you have a couple links, I kind of do the same thing. Like I have an illustration section of my portfolio where it has more book stuff, and then I have like a whole character design portfolio, and they're kind of separate on my website, but they're very easy to navigate. And I'm not saying my portfolio is perfect. It could definitely, it can improve, but it's getting there, which is good. And I'm starting to get work, so something's working, so that's good. Anyway, so I think...
Just real quick, I just want to elaborate a little bit off of what you were talking about with storytelling as well.
Yeah.
Because you were on review board at Disney, weren't you? Yeah, and I was on review board. And
I think I declined your
you probably did, yeah. No, but what you're saying is that there's absolute truth in that, but it's storytelling all the way through. Obviously, there's storytelling in storyboards, and so you want to have that. But like you said, storytelling in your character designs, you don't... We all do the 0 poses and the turns and all that stuff, but to take a character and put them in poses and actions and attitudes that really describe their character, that's when you start sucking the viewer into it. And so you want to see that. If you want to be an environmental designer, you can have different locations within a story that can help tell that story or tell it in a way, so there's different ways of telling story through the different disciplines that you might be interviewing for. So the idea is to suck the viewer in and make your portfolio interesting.
Yeah, for sure. It's huge. Recruiters love seeing that. Okay. Does anybody else have any other tips for this little section that we're in? We ready to move on to having a long career in animation? How to keep getting jobs? Okay. Long career. Who wants to start?
Well, that's kind of ironic. When they asked me to do this panel, I was actually working, so I was like, okay, I got all the tips for everybody, but now I'm not working. So hopefully it's temporary. But I think the point here is like most industries, but there are ebbs and flows of the business, and we just have to kind of roll with that. And I think you just have to keep pursuing what you're passionate about, and don't give up, and have some confidence in yourself, and keep moving forward. That's what I would suggest.
Yeah.
I'd like to elaborate off that too, because moving forward is a great. My personal experience was I left Disney after 21 years, and I went to another company called Digital Domain. And I was there for a couple of years developing a couple of films, and they went under. They went bankrupt. And so then I was left trying to figure out what I was going to do next with my career. And I thought maybe I'd go back to Disney. But there was something in the back of my mind that felt like I wasn't moving forward. that it wasn't. I wanted to do something else, and I really thought, you know what? I don't want to put myself. Some of you may have heard me say this last night. I don't want to put my life in the hands of any executives anymore. I wanted to kind of chart my own path, and I was at a stage in my life where I decided I really want to try something new, and so I started thinking about all these wonderful mentors that I've had over the years and all the things that I had learned from them. And this was kind of around the time that online teaching really started to take off. And I thought maybe this is something I could do. And I really wanted to share some of that knowledge. So I kind of found this niche that, I could try to fill. And so that became this new path that, as my business partner, Nick Birch, and I kind of grew our business, it enabled us, after a few years and after we became self-sustaining, to go off and create our own films and all these other things. So, there was the short-term plan of trying to fill this little niche and make a few bucks here and there and taking our freelance wherever we could as we grew our business, but then having the foresight or the long view of building the business to a point where we could do these big long-term things as well. And so there was that idea as well. So it was just, like you said, just trying to find that path that's going to take you into new territory and not being afraid to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I'm kind of like Matt over here. So Tony reached out to me in January to see if I wanted to be on a panel with these guys. And at the time, I had this great, long-term freelance gig with a mobile game studio called Moon Active. I was working as an independent contractor with them full time, and I was like, this is the coolest job. I'm having so much fun. I'm learning so much because I'm working with some rock star artists. And then 2 weeks after I agreed to be on this panel, I got laid off. And I was like, well, shoot, can I even be on this panel now?
Yes.
I'll try. But then I realized, how I reacted to this layoff. Sure, I was sad and I was disappointed, but I immediately started to hustle. I was like, all right, well, I got laid off from my bread and butter. It's time to find the next thing. So I immediately hit the ground running and started reaching out to my social network, letting people know I was available. And a week later, Marvel reached out to me. I don't have a job yet with them. Because the next day they were like, hey, the immediate need is no longer needed. I'm like, it's fine, reach out anytime. But hey, they reached out to me. And you want to know how they found me? Is somebody that I met at Lightbox from one of my tables who came and bought a pin from me recommended me for the job. So the people that you meet at panels like this are, you never know who's taking your card or who you leave an impression on. So you have to just be a really nice person and make friends. Make friends
True.
In this industry. It's a great industry. And you never know. It might take some time to get your foot in the door in the industry. That's okay. Any job that you take, whether it's an art job or not an art job, is giving you experience to be a good person and an employee. I worked as a graphic designer for 6 years before I got my art to a point where I was actually getting any attention. Took me a while, out of school, and that's okay. But I was learning really good skills at my graphic design job where I was learning leadership, I was learning communication, presentation skills. All of these things are important when you're trying to get into the art industry. It's not just about art. That's the most important thing. You got to have the skills that they're looking for, but the personal skills, who you are as a person and how you work as an employee, those matter too. And people notice those. And that's what gets clients to keep coming back to you, because my little freelance gig with DreamWorks was only supposed to last a month. I've been working with them for 10 months. It just keeps going. They just keep giving me more work, and I'm like, hey, I'll take it. So you got to be really easy to work with and a good person. And I'll let someone else talk now because I'm kind of rambling.
No, I was just gonna kind of go off that because a lot of you guys are also students. And the classmates that you have and the people that you're with now are one day probably going to be your peers, and they're probably going to have jobs. And when you're, hey, I'm looking for a job, you got anything for me? They're the ones that you can reach out to first, and they already know you, you've already worked with them in school, they can give, your classmates and stuff can be great. It's just the connections are really everything.
Yeah. To bounce off of that really quick, when you do have the gig, look out for other artists that you know. Like if you see an opening and you see somebody who's looking for work and you think that they're a good fit for that project, give their name to the recruiter you know. Like look out for each other, because that's how you kind of get your name in the door. When I was working at Moon Active and I was just super busy, I was working so hard. I had so much work to do with them. It was great. But I had some other clients reach out to me during that time to see if I could do work for them, and I was totally slammed. But I knew I had some friends that had recently gotten laid off, so I gave them their names, and that project passed to some of my friends. So being that kind of person that is like looking out for your friends and people you know who are looking for work, be that kind of person, because then people will look out for you in the future. And that's what's so great about this community. It's like, yes, it's competitive, but if you're out there looking out for other artists, when you have a job, like that means a lot to people, and people will remember that. So, anyway, anyone else have any little things they want to talk about?
I think you covered it all. I think you should keep going.
Okay, so maybe another tip, just to kind of talk more about like ways to like hopefully get seen and find some more jobs. So when I got laid off like a month ago, hasn't been that long, for me, I found most of the jobs that I've gotten through my social media because I've built up a little bit of a following there. Most art directors have found me through there. But when I started looking for work, I made one of those. I'm sure you guys have seen them. A lot of artists have been posting them lately. The looking for work post on Instagram. I made one of those. And it was super nice because I had so many like friends and followers on there actually share that post. So it got around. And that's kind of, how people have like emailed me and sent me projects. And so make posts like that, and ask people to share it if they're willing to, or people will share it automatically. And and if you get laid off, it's hard to get laid off. It stinks, but it happens. Everybody's going to get laid off at some point in their life. This is actually my second time getting laid off. But I found that the second time I got laid off I had a much better attitude about it. Yeah, sure, I was a little nervous, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? But I knew that if I hustled and put myself out there, that I could find another project. And that's kind of the life of a freelancer, If you have a project that ends, you got to find the next one.
And your long, successful career is not defined by one job.
Exactly.
Ever.
No. You're going to be pivoting and moving around quite a bit. That's kind of the nature of the art industry. And that's what makes it kind of fun, You get to have a lot of variety. So, pretty awesome. And let's see. What else have we not touched on yet? I think we kind of touched on everything here, but...
Well, let me go ahead and add to what you were just talking about as well.
You.
So, adding to your laying off, one of the things that helped me just advance myself as I was trying to build my own business and my own career is just the idea of getting on a schedule. If you're a freelancer, especially if you're a freelancer, treat it, obviously it is your job, but treat it like a job. I try to treat it like a 9 to 5, 5 days a week, or 9 to 6, or 9 to whenever, job. And so I take my weekends off. I work hard during the week. I sit down and I work at whatever it is on my list to work on for that day. And let's say you get laid off. Well, keep on working, keep on creating, find something to create, to put out there, to let people know that you're there. Keep going, stay in your routine, because to go out of that routine is going to be the kiss of death. And so keep pushing, keep creating, and keep knocking on doors. And then when you do have that work, treat it like work, like I said, especially with freelance, and you sit down and you work. And I literally sit down at 9 a.m., usually 8:30, have my coffee. I work until about 10:30. I might go out and get another coffee, let my dogs out, have a little walk around, take a little break, come back, work until 1 or 2 o'clock, take a little break for lunch, then go back and work until about 5. And then maybe I'll have dinner and maybe go back to work again for a little hour or two, or I quit. But that's my schedule every single day, and just treat it 5 days a week. And so, you'll be amazed at how much you get done when you keep a schedule.
Yeah, for sure. And make time, like he was saying, when you're not working, make time to make personal art for you. What gets you excited? Because recruiters notice that too. They notice the stuff that makes you excited because you can tell. And it shines through in your work. And that's stuff that you can add to your portfolio. If you're not working, look at your portfolio. Like I said earlier, look at your friends' portfolios that are in the industry. See what maybe yours might be missing. And you can like create your own projects. A lot of the stuff that recruiters have noticed with me has been not necessarily studio projects that I've worked on, but some of the personal stuff, because there's a lot of story there and a lot of feeling.
And on a personal note, just real quick, if you know, when I was many of your ages, I had a young family, and it's so important to make time for a young family, you know. And you know, when you're not working, be present. And you know, I really made time for, you know, I'd come home from work when I was at Disney. I'd come home from work and I would have dinner, because I was trying to do two things. I still wanted to be a painter when I was working for Disney, so I would work during the night. But I made sure to come home, have dinner with my kids and my wife, and we'd play. And then when the kids went to bed, we would have our private time together and talk and stuff. And then I'd go from 9 o'clock until whenever I decided to put the paintbrush down, I would paint. But we always made sure to have our little time, and then we'd have our weekends as well. So make time for family as well, and friends or whatever it is. Keep your sanity.
Yeah, for sure. Another fun little story that I thought might be fun to touch on. So with the little project I've been working on with DreamWorks, it's just a little pitch project. It doesn't take up a ton of my time right now, but it's like literally the coolest thing. But I've really gotten to know the team that I've been working with, and I just freelance from Utah. I don't live in LA. But I have little video chats with them every like month or so, and they're just super nice. But I found out that the VP of development that's at DreamWorks, her brother actually lives 5 minutes away from my house in Utah, which is totally random. And she came into town over Thanksgiving, so I took her out for coffee, and we just sat down in person and just like got to know each other as people. And now we're friends. So like, be cool with people, you know? If you have the opportunity to just be really nice to like some of the recruiters that you know or people you meet at Lightbox, just be cool with people and be yourself, be nice, be human. We know that the industry kind of feels like super competitive and it's the corporate world, but like we're all people, and we all appreciate, you know, a friendly person that likes to talk and hang out. So that's another thing that's kind of fun. So yeah. Let's see where we at on time. Getting kind of close. We're getting pretty close to questions. Does anybody else have any like closing thoughts about what we've talked about?
A closing thought for me, as I've been listening to everybody, is I would suggest stay in your lane as my closing thought. In other words, like, you know, you're all young, we're all ambitious, or you're all young and you're all ambitious. But, you know, sometimes it's everybody who's in a hurry to get to the next step. Like, okay, I've animated my first scene, now I want to direct. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So sometimes people kind of jump the gun and they miss the opportunity to really kind of stay where they're at and really learn as much as you can from what you're working on and who you're working with. Because some of those other opportunities are just going to naturally come. And sometimes if you push yourself, you should always push yourself. But I mean, sometimes if you like volunteer and you're jumping too soon, you're going to put yourself in a vulnerable position where you could fail because you're just not prepared yet. So I would just say, take your time a little bit and don't be in such a hurry to you know, you could say, yeah, someday I want to direct. But if you really don't know what that means, you really don't want to do it, because you really have to have some skill sets to be able to hit and do those job functions. So really pay attention around the people you're with, and you can learn a lot where you're at. So I would just say, take your time a little bit and enjoy, you know, where you're at, and just the opportunities will spring from there. Okay, that's what I would say.
Yeah, that's really good advice for sure.
My one tiny closing thought is it's very much hustle culture, but also burnout is like super real. I work like full-time animation 9 to 6, and I work freelance, and I have to make personal stuff, and I do conventions. So very familiar with burnout, and it really sucks. So yeah, like what you were saying, like really make sure you take time. Yeah. Take time, have a schedule. Don't work unpaid hours. Like
have other hobbies. have other hobbies besides
yeah.
art. Like for me, I started running, so that's my other thing that I do. Like when I'm not drawing, I'm outside running, and that's a good way to like get outside and see the world and get some inspiration. Like I've been out on runs and seen like, hey, that's a cool idea. I should draw something like that. And so like have some things that can help you pull you out of your burnout, because it's real. It really is real. And sometimes you don't have time to like say, hey, client, I need to take a week off from this project. So you have to find little things that help you kind of reignite that spark and like pull you through the tough times. And yes, take breaks and don't overdo it. Don't be a workaholic like me, because I'm a workaholic.
Well, we do some questions.
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, well.
How do we do questions? Do we need to take the mic around? How does that work? Okay, just yell your questions.
I'll let you call them.
Okay. How about you in the front here?
I have just a burning real talk question, because I don't personally know anyone or have family relatives that work in this industry. I have a really hard time wrapping my head around going project to project and feeling like you're stable. Is that something to start to prepare, like you're just not going to be stable? Or is that a goal that's like reasonable to be like, I'm going to just keep things lined up when it comes to jobs?
Yeah, it's kind of a process. I'll speak to my experience on this. So I was working a comfortable 9-to-5 job at a company for like the last, I mean, I had a bunch of different ones, but I was really scared of freelance for a while, because I'm like, how the heck am I going to do this? And then I took a chance last year when I had this independent contractor job come through, and I was like, I'm really scared about this, but I'm just going to take it. I'm going to take a risk, and I'm going to do this. And it was like one of the best jobs I've ever had, and I got laid off. But I took a risk and it paid off, and it was a great job, and I learned so much. And now I'm kind of at that point where I'm like, all right, now I gotta like, I'm a freelancer, I gotta keep this going. But I don't think I would have been ready for that like 5 years ago. So I think it's kind of just asking yourself when you're kind of ready to kind of be ready to do that hustle culture. And sometimes it takes a while to like kind of build up to that. That was my experience, because I wasn't ready for this type of lifestyle a few years ago, but I built up to it, and I got some confidence, and I got my work to a point where like I felt like I could get work pretty consistently. So
Yeah, I work contracts like full time. That's contracts are usually like 6 to, I think the longest one I had was like a year and a half maybe at a time. There's no 20 years employed at Disney anymore, really. It's all like project based. And I think you just sort of have to, like, it does kind of suck. But if you start to look at it as like, it's a good opportunity, and when you have those breaks, you can use those breaks like for you and like to do what you want to do, and not look at them as like panic time and like, oh my God, unemployed time, as like, I'm on like a sort of vacation until I find something else.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, yeah, having like some side hustles definitely helps with like easing my mind, because like I kind of know that I'm gonna be like sort of okay. It's not a steady paycheck or anything, but like it's not the end of the world. And yeah, just trusting. And like I said, like usually, even though the contracts are short, they do tend to like roll, and like companies like to keep people that they like with like in. So usually like a contract will end and they'll hopefully usually find something else for you. Sometimes that's not the case, not always. And like a few years ago, there was like that whole writer's strike crisis, and like everybody didn't have jobs, and it was a whole thing. But like hopefully, knock on wood, that was really abnormal. But yeah, it just sort of is the way that it is. But it's not all bad.
Prepping yourself. If you have the ability in times of plenty, putting something away to prepare for those lean times. Budgeting and being strict about budget and staying on a budget even when things are plenty, so that you can look forward to those times when things might be lean. And so if you can get into that mental space, then your mental stability will be something that will evolve, and you'll be prepared. In the beginning, it's like anything else. As you grow and mature, those things become part of you. So yeah.
Yeah, Aaron, you took the words like right out of my mouth. I was going to say finance, plan for your finances during times like that.
Yeah.
That's so true. It helps a lot.
It does.
Yeah. All right, more questions. I get to
Oh,
decide.
yeah, go ahead.
Go for it. Wait,
No.
I'm
pointing
yeah.
at you. Yeah.
Let's do you right here in the black sweatshirt.
Yeah, with so many more studios sourcing jobs, is there anything you can do as an individual to stay competitive, or is it worth the time worrying about that?
So with like looking for freelancers, is that what you're asking? Yeah, I mean, I freelance right now for DreamWorks, and I don't live in California, and I don't know if I plan to at this point. I feel like I got kind of lucky, but you're kind of just doing the same thing, just staying relevant, having your portfolio ready, still apply for jobs, even if it says they want the job to be in studio, apply for it anyway if you don't live in California. Maybe they'll want to freelance with you. That's been my experience. I don't know if you guys have anything. Yeah. Apply anyway. Let's do you with the green sweater back there.
Similar to that point of kind of like applying anyway, if there's a job that says like it requires, for context, I'm a student and I'm about to graduate.
Mhm.
If there's a job that says like it requires like X number of years of experience, and like you look at the description and feel like based on the description, regardless of experience, you could do it, but you don't have the years of experience, would you say go ahead and apply for that, or?
Absolutely. Apply anyway.
If you've got the portfolio.
Yeah, if you've got the portfolio and you're like a good fit for the project, like years of experience, like it's something that they put on there, but it's not necessarily going to rule you out. I mean, you've read the job descriptions for all sorts of jobs. They're novels. Like, not necessarily everybody's going to have everything on that list, but if you're a good fit for the project, then you've got a shot. So apply anyway. You never know. You miss all of the shots you don't take, so take the shot. Oh, yes.
This is something a little bit off topic, but how do you handle workplace politics?
Oh, workplace, yeah.
That's a whole nother panel.
I just want to add this, like you want to stay good with people, but of course everyone has their own opinions, but you're there to create, but how do you separate your personal life alongside politics where you could just work with people, just create without having that tension? Because relationships will, I think, play a big part in the longevity, being in good terms with your peers. How would you handle that? Or if you've been in this situation?
Oh yeah, I can kind of speak to this a little bit. So before I got into the whole freelance gig thing, because when you're a freelancer, you're kind of working from afar and you meet with people occasionally. You don't really have so much of that personal relationship all the time. But in my experience working for companies full time, where I get to know my coworkers, we work together for years, and there's different departments. There can be drama. Me personally, I'm a very easygoing person, and I hate making people feel uncomfortable or, anything like that. So I just try to be really nice and really understanding and to be a good listener and a good communicator, being really clear, and just not being judgmental. But that's like me personally, so.
Can I add to that? Be yourself. You get hired to do a job, do the job. People are going to talk. People talk in the halls. Ignore it. Stay true to yourself. Do your job, and things will work out. You don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Don't be a jerk.
Yeah,
You're going to end up working with a jerk at some point, but don't be a jerk back. Yeah, that follows you.
truth.
Aaron had to learn the hard way.
Let's do you right here in the front.
Okay, so quick question.
Yeah.
He's not a jerk. So very. So I was gonna say this. So let's say you have a quote unquote baby, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or a baby.
Let's say you have an art baby, and well, you can tell other stories, you can develop other characters, you can do a lot of things, but should you let your baby out for people to see? Like, even if it's like, it's not like half baked, but it's just like, okay, I have an idea, I got a story, I feel like if I put it out there, I'm afraid somebody will steal my baby. You know what I mean? But I'm just like, man, but in order for me to get publicity, in order for that to get traction, it might be best to put it out. So it's just like, which one do I do?
Yeah, I'd say put it out there, because that's the stuff that people like to see. That's what makes you you, and that's what gets you noticed. Like, put your baby out there, and
Like
that's,
watermark the shit out of it,
yeah, that too. Yeah, because we don't like when people steal our work, and sometimes that happens and it's really annoying. But like I think that the pros well outweigh the cons in this scenario, because like you got to show the world who you are and what you're passionate about and the ideas that you're excited about.
But the flip side of that is bake it as long as you can before you put it out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, really. I mean, if it's half baked, like you said, bake it more before you put it out there. You know, get it solid. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you're welcome.
Something we were talking about was not tucking into something before your repertoire.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you had any personal experiences, or if any of y'all have that, where you wish you had spent more time.
No, I learned really early. It was really interesting because the story I tell sometimes is we were doing this training program at Disney, and then all the trainees became assistant animators, and then the assistant animators became animators. And then for me, I was an assistant animator, and then I had an opportunity to go into storyboarding, and I was like, I want to be an animator. Why do I want to go into storyboarding? But I kind of went in there, and I was continuing to storyboarding as my colleagues were being promoted to animators, and I was just storyboarding. But then when I got a chance to storyboard, I was ready because I had learned so much in storyboarding. Like you don't even think about that would contribute to making me a better animator. But I was so confident that when I sat down at the board, I knew exactly what to do. And that was a good example for me, and that's why I say the story is, even though I was boarding and I saw the people that came in at the same time as me going up the chain faster than me, I still kind of stayed in my groove and learned everything I could while I was there, and I didn't even realize it at the time that all those experiences were going to make me a better animator. So that's just one example, but am I answering your question or no? Okay.
Awesome. Did you have something?
Yeah,
to
just
say?
like
Go
really
for it.
quickly. Also, I feel like in my experience, it's almost like you learn how to do the job that you want before you actually get the job. So like I was a designer and I was pretty junior, but then I started taking on like revisions from my senior, and then that was kind of like, okay, now I'm not really a junior designer anymore, but I'm technically still am. And then after that I moved into the next one, and then I was on this project for a long time, and then people started coming to me to like ask for help, and I started making like tutorials for other departments and whatever. And then at that point I was like, okay, well now I feel like now I'm kind of a senior designer. So the next one, now I'm a senior designer, but it's like kind of like waterfalls. Like you learn how to do the job, and then you move into the job, and then you feel ready for it. And like, I want to be an art director someday, but like I have a realistic timeline about it. And like, I'm really close with my current art directors, and like, they're kind of like mentoring. So I feel like it's like taking the steps first. It's like trying on the shoes, and then once you feel okay with that, and once it starts kind of coming to you naturally, it's like then you feel more ready. It's like step up, like baby steps.
Yeah, and sometimes you might have a reality check. When I was a student, I think it was my junior year of college, we went on a trip to New York with the illustration class, and then they took us to Blue Sky. You guys remember Blue Sky? Yeah. Rest in peace. Love Blue Sky. Well, back when there was a studio there, they took us to Blue Sky for a tour, and I had my little sketchbook full of like all of my beloved character sketches. I was so excited to like get out and be in the industry, and I showed my sketchbook to like one of the artists there, and they were very kind, but they were very real with me that I had some work to do before I was going to be able to like be a character designer in the industry. And that was a reality check for me, and it did take some time. It took me like maybe 5 or 6 years to really get my style and work to a point where it was like industry ready, and then another few years to actually get noticed. So, I'm not saying that's the way it is for everybody, but sometimes it just takes time. It takes time, and you might have a few reality checks along the way, but don't let that get you down. Let it fuel you to like get out there and work on your work, because it will change over time. It'll change a lot.
Can I add a thing on your don't get down on yourself comment? So a lot of you guys are students, you're in class, you're sitting next to people, you guys are seeing each other's work, and that could be very exciting, or it could be very like intimidating. you're sitting next to the star student in the class, and this guy's just incredible draftsman, or she's just, knocking it out of the park with her animation, and you look at yourself and you're like, oh my God, my stuff stinks. My point is, don't get hung up on that, because I would just keep pursuing it. I'll tell you why. Because there's a lot of stories, and probably Aaron knows a lot of these guys too. There are people that, are a little less than, like they don't have the draftsmanship, but they're great storytellers. Or they don't have, they're not great animators, but they're really good at, dramatic moments when they're boarding. My point is, sometimes if you're not a great animator, you may become a phenomenal director. I had somebody come up to me and go, you're a really good animator in Cal Arts, and that's why I decided not to be an animator and go more into directing. Now the guy's a way more successful director than me, so I'm going, thanks for that story. Thank you. Yeah, so anyway, my point is, don't get discouraged, stay focused, encourage each other, learn from each other, and things are going to work out all right. Okay.
Wise words. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming to this panel. I hope we gave you some good advice.
If you like what you just saw, please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel, Pencilish Studios.